FFM Academy, Episode 2, The Digital Marketer.
I'm Dan from Feature FM. I'm joined here today by Kaitlyn Moore, Senior Vice President of Marketing at mtheory and former Maverick executive. Kaitlyn is a powerhouse marketer behind campaigns for Jelly Roll, Tyler Childers, Shakey Graves, Alison Krauss, and more. She is also an adjunct professor at Syracuse University's Bandier program for music and entertainment industries, a leading music business education program. Kaitlyn is one of the sharpest minds in music marketing today. So hi, Kaitlyn. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks, Dan.
So the first question that I have for you, pretty general. What do you do?
That's a tough question. I feel like it changes on a daily basis. But in general, mtheory is a manager services company. So we partner with independent artist managers to supplement their teams. So we really take cues from our managers on what they need and where they need us to lean in. I think over the past few years, particularly probably the past 10 years, managers just have had to take on so much more work as labels are thinning out, and there's just so many things that they need to be experts in that it becomes difficult for them to staff up their teams in a way that makes sense financially so they can partner with us and we basically act as their team. So that involves everything from high-level strategy, touring strategy, marketing strategy, fan communication and audience development, really all aspects of the artist career.
And when it comes to the focus in on digital marketing, what would you say is the role of the digital marketer?
I think in today's age, it's really managing that fan communication and the artist presence across all platforms. And then in addition to that, I really think the audience development portion of it is huge. I think the more artists can build their own audiences and those groups of people that they can talk to directly, I think that's really important in today's history.
Yeah, no, I know from where we sit, the trend of owning your own audience, knowing your fan base, being able to contact them directly has been extremely prevalent. In general, what trends are you seeing in music marketing that artists should pay attention to right now? What digital platforms are most important for artists to focus on right now?
I think it's really tough for artists today. I think there's so many platforms, and in that sense, you just need so much content. And the cost that it takes to create content and the time that it takes to create content, I think can be really overwhelming for artists. So one of the trends I'm seeing is trying to utilize content across multiple platforms. So what's a piece of video that you can put on YouTube Shorts, on Spotify clips, on Instagram and TikTok, if there are things that you can get kind of more bang for your buck out of than having to do bespoke content for each platform. I also think as fans are just consuming so much media on a daily basis, you really have to try to get something that's going to cut through. So I feel like we're seeing a lot of social content in particular that has a hook on the beginning of it to kind of draw people in and catch their attention so they don't just scroll by. But I think in the grand scheme of things, it's just artists really trying to connect with that fan base and show some authenticity and vulnerability. And I think that's where the audience starts to really draw in and connect with them.
Sure. I know you work across a pretty eclectic roster, both at mtheory and in your experience. Do you have any examples or even just one great example of a very effective campaign that was run or the most effective strategies you've seen for building an engaged fan base?
Yeah, one in particular that comes to mind, our team worked with Ashe on her latest album release, and I think she did a phenomenal job. She had just been coming back from a hiatus for a couple of years, so it was rebuilding that audience, and her fan base is so reactive to everything, and she mapped out like putting Easter eggs in Spotify Canvas clips and on a Pinterest board, and it was just like anywhere you looked, there was something in that campaign that was connecting with fans and bringing them in. And I think throughout all of that, she was just super honest with her fans for where she was at and how she was feeling. And I think that vulnerability really made people connect with her. And I think we see that a lot with artists now, where if they are able to kind of let their walls down a little bit and get personal, it does make it easier for fans to connect with them.
Yeah, one of the things that we see a lot or hear a lot from artists is I don't have a release right now. I'm kind of, I don't want to use the word hiatus, but I'm kind of not doing so much, not doing a lot of marketing. But we are in the camp of marketing should never be turned off. Marketing should always be on. So what are some tips of what artists should be focusing on when they're in between releases?
I do think that that is the point where you should really double down on your marketing efforts and keep building that audience. I think as much as you can do to kind of keep the platforms active. So whether it's on Spotify, even if you don't have a release coming up, maybe you're making a playlist that then you're pushing out to fans. Or it's something thematic around a holiday that's coming up, or it's just a collection of songs that inspire you. I think that can go a long way on socials and in crafting your brand, but also you can use tools like Feature FM to get people to follow that playlist and get their data in that sense. I think anything that you can do around that to also collect their information, whether it's getting them to sign up for an email list or an SMS list, I think just staying on top of or on their radar is important. And I also think that that's a good time that you can then reward fans for supporting you. So whether you're running a giveaway or just giving them special behind the scenes content. I think if artists are open to it, just giving a glimpse of their daily life and what they're doing when they're not on the road or in the studio is always a good way to connect with people. But yeah, I definitely agree that keeping things active as much as you can as you're warming up to get into a release cycle is important.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think we see artists, maybe they have a history of content or history of music. Maybe they are performing, maybe they're touring, their merch store is still live, they're still active on socials. There's always something to be engaging your audience with. There's always a way and a reason to go out and engage your fans, to collect more contact info, to grow your audience. So you're always focusing on those efforts and always focusing on growing. That makes a lot of sense.
I think it's a good opportunity to also see what fan content is out there, because even if you're not actively promoting something, people are still probably talking about you. So whether it's people wearing merch that are posting it on socials or creating videos to a certain song, I think anything you can do to kind of shed a light on that fan content and highlight them, I think goes a long way.
That's great advice. We work with a lot of artists that are very early in their careers. They're just starting out and they know that they have something great, but they're kind of taking their first steps. So for those artists that are just starting out, what should their very first marketing priorities be? And even including some advice on what a realistic marketing budget would look like for a new release.
Yeah, I always think setting up an email list is number one. I think as early as you can do that. There's certain things that I think sometimes get missed in the beginning, like the email list or an SMS list. There are some platforms that it's free up until a certain amount, so you might as well start collecting that data. I think setting up a pixel so you're collecting people that go to your website and then you can retarget them with Facebook ads. That's something that is free to set up too and super valuable as you grow in your career to have that from the beginning. And I really think it's just not being precious about content. I think sometimes artists get into their head about it has to be this polished piece of content and video and it has to be expensive. And I think nowadays it's kind of even playing field where anybody can make content. And I think there's so many tools out, even CapCut, Canva, that you can edit pretty high quality videos yourself for free and not have to do these robust video shoots. I do think the more that you can do to kind of make sure you're hitting all platforms, so whether that is a video that's then being repurposed as a Spotify clip or posting on YouTube Shorts regularly. I think as long as you can keep all of those platforms semi-active, it will help you in building everything up. On the ads front, I don't think you need too much. There's platforms that we work with. Boost is one of them that have very small minimums for ads. I think it's $100. And I think when you're developing, a little can go a long way. And platforms like that too, they use AI in their targeting and trying to figure out what that audience is that you're going to hit. So especially as you are trying to figure out what your audience is, using those tools to help you do it, it makes a big difference.
That's very helpful. What are some common mistakes that you see artists make when promoting their music digitally?
I think socials in general right now can be really frustrating for artists. It's funny, I sometimes I feel like socials are a crapshoot, just in what's going to work and what's not. So I think if you can get out of your head and not be precious about what you're putting out there and not get frustrated if something doesn't perform as well as you hoped it would. I know we talk internally that it's never, or it's very rarely the music content that you want to take off that's going to take off. It's the personal content or something random. So I feel like you can't control that in a sense. It's just being consistent with the content that you're putting out and make sure you are kind of feeding that algorithm. I think also some artists get in their heads and aren't necessarily willing to do the work. I think even with touring, I see a lot that artists don't want to put a video or do video liners and push it on their socials. And at the end of the day, I think the reason why a lot of people don't may not go to a show is because they didn't know about it. So I think you have to get out of your head and know that not everybody is looking at your feed all the time. And sometimes we have to say things multiple times for it to get through. So just trying to let go a little bit and just feed content out there.
Yeah, on something you said, we see a healthy debate in our artist community around being a content creator versus being a musician and saying, I just want to be the artist. I just want to create the music. I don't want to be a content creator. At the same time, promotion has always been part of the artist business. Before social media existed, there was always marketing, there was always promotion. It was just through different mediums. You had to do some sort of marketing yourself, some sort of content creation, just not through social media. So I think we tell artists you can be as hands-on or as hands-off as you want to be, but the fact that all of these social platforms exist for you to be there anytime you want, it's an amazing tool. It's an amazing opportunity to make sure that you can always be promoting yourself. You can always be marketing yourself. And it's important to take advantage of a tool like that, to say, hey, that's there, but I don't want to be a content creator. You still need to do some sort of marketing, some sort of promotion. That is if you want to truly build a business. I think a very tiny percentage of artists are really going to make it without having that additional promotional and marketing component across social media and across those channels.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I feel like because there is such a wide range of platforms today, you can really identify which one you're most comfortable on and focus on that. And I feel like it's easy enough to kind of repurpose content across the others and make sure that they're active in a sense. But if Instagram is your jam and you want to go and respond to comments on Instagram and be active on stories and do all that, focus on Instagram. Don't try to make yourself fit into TikTok if that's not your thing. You can repurpose certain content over there so there's presence. But I think it's really whichever one you feel comfortable engaging on, double down on that one.
No, that makes sense. That's also helpful advice for time management, right? You have so many things to do as an artist. So if there's one platform working super well for you and you can double down on that and maybe wait on the others, you're also going to have more time to do other things that you need to do.
Yeah, I think there's also some low lift tactics to keep socials active without having to show your face necessarily on them. I think one of the ones that we see artists engage with a bunch is just a Q&A on Instagram. You don't have to post a video for that. You just put the question box up and then you can respond to it. And that gets a ton of interaction because fans are asking questions and then they want to see all of the answers. So it's something that's a little easier of a lift than doing a full-blown live stream video, but you still get a lot out of it. I think the time management is a big thing for artists nowadays. I think trying to get, unless they're living in the headspace of social media, it's trying to carve out time for that with all of these other things going on. And I think that the more they can kind of not necessarily bank content, because I think fans can see through that if it's a content shoot and you're in the same outfit for months at a time, rolling stuff out, but being creative to get a couple things at once that you don't feel like you have to wake up in the morning every day and shoot.
Yeah, and it's a brave new world. We see so many artists going about putting their own teams around them, not necessarily needing to go the traditional label route, and this is exactly where it sounds like mtheory really comes into play, is working with the artists and their managers and their teams directly to help fill in the team and fill in the gaps where artists are forging their own path?
Yeah, and I think it varies so much artist to artist. We always start the conversation asking what the artist's goal is and what the manager's goal is, and then try to build around that. So some artists, if they just want to go out and play smaller shows and build from the ground up, we can help support them in that way. Other artists might feel like they need a major label for radio or whatever else they need support wise. So then we craft our plan around that. But yeah, I think one of the big things that I always try to stress is, I mean, a couple months ago, we all thought TikTok was going to go away, right? So it's preparing for the worst and knowing that you could build up these huge audiences on all these different platforms and tomorrow they could disappear. So what can you do to put yourself in a position where you still have access to that? And what can you control? Because so much of this is out of our control.
Yeah, any platform can go away tomorrow, and if they own your entire audience, then you lose them. So converting that audience, converting that fan base into a direct email list, contact list, phone numbers, people that you can actually communicate with directly is more power to you.
Yeah, that also, though, does become a bit of a catch-22 in that as big as you build those lists, the more expensive it's going to get to maintain them and hit them. So I think it's a balance of building those CRM lists, but also knowing like how you're utilizing it to bring in revenue. So knowing that if you have a list of engaged fans, if you're hitting them with tour opportunities or merchandise and really crafting a plan so that you're getting some revenue back from that and you're not just building this massive list that then you're going to be paying to maintain.
Yeah, very well said. It's very important for the artists to make sure that the way they're communicating, the way they're marketing is ultimately driving revenue, driving the business forward. And we always compare artists to any business and artists as entrepreneurs for any company that's trying to grow. And how can you market yourself and how can you invest your dollars into being ROI positive?
Yeah.
Great. Well, Kaitlyn, thank you so much for being here and for the amazing conversation, amazing advice. Really appreciate it.
Anytime. Thank you so much for having me.